another episode. My name's Sarah Rees, and today I'm going to talk about going from IAPT into private therapy. That's exactly what I did. I've done a video on going from the NHS into private therapy, but I'm going to try and be a bit more specific to people who are coming from an IAPT service like myself. I did it 5 years ago, so it could have changed quite a bit, but hopefully some of it won't. I was just Heather came from quite a different area in the NHS, and she thinks there's a real kind of difference when you come out of an IAPT service. So she thought, and we both thought it would be better to be a bit more focused on leaving an IAPT service. Well done if you're considering it. My gosh, well done for coping with life in an IAPT service. It's, people in IAPT are so passionate about what they do. They're so, really hard workers, motivated and passionate, and know how to work within difficult circumstances with high pressure. If you can do that, private practice is going to be a dog for you. It really is. So I've just made a note of some of the things that I noticed when I came from IAPT into private practice. I suppose I was going to start with one thing, but just thinking now, the biggest thing, the toughest thing when I went to see my first client was knowing that I had to charge them at the end. Oh my God, that was so tough. I felt awful and awkward, and it was just really tricky, because I suppose I was a nurse in the NHS and worked in the NHS for kind of 15 years. Never thought I'd kind of be full-time in private practice. I kind of hoped to do a bit of private work, but I was really gutted to leave the NHS because I wanted it to succeed and work. But what I realised working in IAPT was that so many people weren't getting access to psychological therapy, and providing private therapy does improve access. I know that 1/3 of my clients I see in private therapy are also on NHS waiting lists. I know that I think about 99% of people end up not going into the NHS. So yes, they've had to pay for therapy, but they've been able to be seen a lot quicker. I've worked with a lot of young people with social anxiety that are just about to do their GCSEs, and just, to be honest, can't wait a year on an NHS waiting list. So you are improving access to psychological therapy, but you do have to charge for it. I suppose how I kind of settled that in my mind is knowing that they were getting a service, they were getting a therapist that's well rested, that's calmer. I was happier, I was much more focused, still am. I have a better work-life balance. I absolutely love my job and what I do, and it's not that I didn't in the NHS, but I wasn't happy. I always loved the client work, but I always struggled with the politics around it and some of the staffing issues. I felt like I was working with people that were being bullied and that were at the brink of burnout, and my mental health wasn't good. I was not happy in the last few years of being in the NHS, although it wasn't the client and it wasn't the delivering the CBT. I loved that. I could even get my head around the paperwork and the targets and stuff. I can tick a few boxes, and I'm a bit competitive. I don't mind a few targets. It's the politics, and there was this, I felt, a bit of a blame culture coming in. So people were kind of, if you weren't reaching your targets or you weren't able to see the amount of clients that they were demanding you could in a week, it was kind of, the tone of voice was, what can you do to meet this? What, very much, instead of us and how can we help and how can we develop this service together and make sure we're seeing so many clients, it was very much putting it back on you, and I struggled with that. I struggled with it because as a therapist, your mind is your tool, and some weeks I can see 23 clients and I'm on top form and I'm great, but sometimes things happen in my life and I need to take a break, and I just can't do it. I can't do that amount of work week in, week out. I don't know who can really. I think that's one of the stresses on people. I'm not sure how many people are being seen in an IAPT service now, so what the kind of caseload demands are, but just for me it wasn't sustainable. So when I'm charging a client, I know that for me that they're getting the best version of me possible. So that made it easy to charge. I found that just kind of making payment, kept being very clear about my charges, that was something that was really important to me. So having it on my website, I send it out in the first email, I tell people on the phone. There's no way I want that conversation of how much are you, and like, oh my god, I can't afford it. Or I want people who can book in with me know how much I am, and it's not a problem for them. If I do get an email that says I need CBT and I can't afford this, I direct them to IAPT services, Anxiety UK. There's lots of means tested options out there, and other therapists might work from home, can charge a lower rate or charge different rates to me because they don't bloody work in Wilmslow, which is really expensive to have an office in. So different different therapists are charging different amounts for lots of different reasons. Sometimes that's because they're not accredited, or they're at different areas in their career or times in their career, not that they're not giving high quality, good, effective therapy. So it's getting your resources in front of you so that you know. And I spend a lot of my time, which is kind of work that I don't get paid for, making sure people get the right therapist for them. That's not always me. Okay, so, and I got a bit of a mantra. I had to kind of get my mantra around how I was going to charge people. I think getting a card machine is really important, being able to offer backs, although I don't really do that now because you end up chasing things, but chasing payments, which is time consuming. But at the end of the session, my mantra is, and how would you like to pay for today? I always say, do you have private healthcare? And if I can, I'll help people access that. But I just say, how would you like to pay for today? And get your mantra, practice it, and make sure that you've named it and it's up front at the start of the session. Get your little mantra in place, and practice makes perfect. And I think, I have amazing supervision from a number of supervisors. I don't just have one. I pay a lot for my supervision, and I think it's really great quality, and I know that I love learning from these people, so it's fantastic. But I also spend a lot more on my personal development as well, which has been important. I'm trained in compassion focused therapy and done all sorts of other therapy, training events that I just couldn't have done if I was in the NHS, because the NHS just didn't have the bandwidth for it. So knowing and being secure and confident that the people that come to see you are getting a really good, professional, ethical service, and that you're performing at your very best. I think we have a responsibility to offer really, high quality and good value, and it's important that we do. Otherwise, the reputation of CBT will go down the pan. So we owe it for everybody. And if you come into this industry, it's because you're caring and you're passionate about what you do. So you're going to be passionate about delivering a good quality service. Improving access to psychological therapies doesn't just happen in the NHS. In fact, it can't, because the NHS is not coping. And just like with every other service, my dentist is private, and every other service, there's options. You have options. I can pay £5 for my haircut, or I can pay £5,000 for my haircut, and every amount in between. And that's access. Choices and access needs to be different. There's lots of charities doing some great work out there. There's lots of self-help groups. We need to keep working on access. I don't think we're there yet, but private therapy is one way people are going to be accessing CBT. People need to get used to it, and I think they are doing. Okay, the power shift I found really interesting when I came into private therapy, in that I was so conditioned to think that to welcome somebody in and say, you'll have 8 sessions, and then they're paying for the service, they'll have as many sessions as they like. And some people will come and say, thank you very much, that was 1 session, and I expect them to carry on and have a course of sessions, and they just wanted 1 session, and that's been useful, and they're going to go away and have a think about it. That was a surprise. Some people don't need, that's just the amount of people that just have 4 sessions, which made me think, oh my god, I've dragged how many people through 8 or 12 sessions? How many of them just were happy with 4 but came week in, week out? That was a bit of a shock. Actually, I even thought, that is interesting in terms of the waiting list for the NHS, isn't it? That we are dictating, you will have 8 sessions, and people are having 8 sessions. What if we didn't have that time limit? Maybe some people would have less. I found that really interesting. The other thing is, so the power shift, there is a power shift. I really like that. I'm happy with that, but be prepared for it. It's a surprise. Well, I found it a surprise anyway. And people having much longer therapy. So I've seen people for 4 years. Yeah, I've got 1 client I've seen from pretty much the start. American, so everybody in their family has just therapy. That's culturally what they do. It's kind of like they say it's like going to the gym. You go and see a therapist once a month, and that's what they do. So I see a lot of people that just continued, and I suppose I've worked with my supervisor on that and kind of said, I'm not delivering CBT, it's kind of maintenance. And the kind of guidance I've had is that if that's what people want, that's what people want. You're there to deliver the service people want, and it's kind of like giving them top up physiotherapy, or taking their mind to the gym now and again. I think it is important to still review and reflect. Sometimes I do feel like I'm going down the business coaching or personal professional performance coaching, and I'm interested in that. People feel like they're getting stuff out of it. It's, people don't come for an hour's therapy if they don't want to be there, and they definitely don't pay for it. So, and we regularly review, and you have to have really good high quality supervision, I think, to kind of get your head around some of the shifts. The other thing that I was worried about, I suppose, which is why I have done so much marketing and focused so much on it, is that I thought I'd be seeing people for 6 to 8 to maybe 12 sessions of CBT, and then I wouldn't see them again. What I find is that a lot of people come back for therapy. So I've had people have developed cancer, have bereavements, just have things happen in their life, and they come back, once a year for a couple of sessions, or at different times in life. So people do come back, and when I've worked with somebody and they finish therapy and they go off, if they email me and phone me back and say, I need to come in, you've got that established relationship. I get them in, and that sometimes means that I'm overworking, and that can be tricky. So you need to kind of give yourself a little bit of space, but it took a while to happen. So that was probably about a couple of years in, I noticed that. So you might not notice that in the first kind of year. The other thing it might be different for everybody, it took about 2 years for people to start referring me to friends and family, and the word of mouth thing to kind of catch on, which is just like the perfect referrals, isn't it? When somebody's you've been recommended to somebody, it's so lovely. So what else have I got? The shift in the use of measures. So in IAPT you do measures every single session. You're very conditioned to doing it, and then you don't have to do it at all. I do still do it. I've toned down how I do it. I don't do it every session, so I do PHQ 9 and GAD 7 at the start of sessions, and then with some people every 4 sessions, and some people I do it just at the end of sessions. And I find that it's kind of nice to say, here's where you were, here's where you are now. I find that people really get a lot out of that, and sometimes I do it to just kind of firm up a kind of diagnosis, or to get more information. So I definitely still use them, but not with the intensity. but you are conditioned. It's tough to get out of it a little bit. You can really think about how you want to work and how you want to deliver your therapy, and you know, what areas you want to specialise in, and you know, so specifically work with certain disorders, and say no to work as well, so you have a lot more flexibility over how you work. You have more training, I mentioned that, you can have more supervision, you can really allow your personality to shine through a little bit more in kind of the way you market yourself. In fact, I think it's quite important that you, as a therapist, you're selling you, people are very much choosing you, so having a bit of your personality out there as much as you can and you feel comfortable with is hugely important. You really need to focus a lot more on what the client wants. I found in an IAPT service, I was quite new as a CBT therapist, so it might have developed anyway with the supervision, although I didn't get much supervision, not the amount I needed considering the amount of clients I was seeing. I didn't get enough really for me, but I'm a lot more focused on what the client wants to get out and into tailoring therapy. You can be a little bit like session 1 do this, session 2 do this, and you will find in private therapy that you get people that have been to the NHS, and some will say, I felt like they were trying to put me in a box and I didn't fit in any of their boxes. And I think you can get a little, because you're so focused on the outcomes and being so, I don't know, trying to say it politically correct, I just say what I think, so it's tricky. Just a little bit more fixed. I suppose you've got such time limited amount of sessions of what, and you want to get the best results. You are focused, and of course in private therapy you want the best results, but we're in the business of therapy, and to quote the wonderful Patricia Murphy, we need to hear people's stories. Slow it down. Every supervisor I've had used to say that. They don't say it as often, so that's probably a good sign. Slow it down, slow the whole thing down, and listen to people's stories a lot more. You know, that's the thing that the clients remember, that's what they benefit from. When you do, you get your feedback back, which, you know, hopefully you do in private therapy. It's the relationship and it's the space to talk and be heard that is the powerful stuff. As well, you know, CBT is amazing. There's loads of great change methods and stuff in that. But it's getting that combination right, I suppose. So really focusing on what the client wants in a slightly different way. I hope I've explained that well. What else? Client's return. Paperwork, oh my god, minimal, and that is so lovely. And so I use write up really brief notes. I use my notes to guide my next session, like what have I done in that session and what do we need to do in the next session, what's the homework, what do I need to review at the next session. Really minimal, all online, not carrying anything around. It's brilliant. Risk is I don't feel like it's not much different. I felt quite isolated in the NHS. I was working with people that were absolutely snowed under and bogged down. I didn't really feel like going into the office, and kind of people had their heads down they were snowed under. So I was working in little offices with nobody around me, didn't feel that supportive. So with risk now, I do the same as what I would do then. I have a risk assessment, do a risk crisis plan with people. I, you know, very much in the mindset of supporting people to reduce their own risks. So contacting their GP, contacting their relatives or support system to get help in place. I'd contact GPs, write letters to GPs where risk is concerned, and I would get an appointment with my supervisor to discuss it. I suppose I am aware in private work of having a couple of people around me that I can phone, you know, like Heather Hannah Taylor, I would, you're in the group, you know, I hope you don't mind, but I would phone you, Tobin. There are people that I would just phone up that are, you know, I would be there for them if they needed to run something by me, so it's creating a community. I'm a lot happier, a lot calmer, and I have a good half an hour between each sessions. I have more time, and that's really important to me, and I think you do need to kind of make sure you have the time, because, you know, people are not just paying for the hour that you deliver therapy, they are paying for time around that as well. That is kind of, I see that as their time, that I get myself into their headspace and I do their notes and kind of settle down after their session. So I wouldn't really, sometimes I see back to back, but I really don't do it, and if I did, it would be somebody that was very established, you know, two people that were very established that I'd been seeing for a while, not two new clients. So planning your time is different. It is your time. I think it's really important that you kind of think about how you want your business to look, how you want your week to look. So write out your ideal week and try and stick to that, or kind of work towards that. You know, you don't need to be snowed under, you know, and you've got to look after your health when you're in private practice, and your mental health as well. So as you're doing in the NHS, but I suppose when you work for yourself, you've got more flexibility of how you care for yourself. You don't have to work 9 to 5. You can, you know, if you're better in the evening, work in the evening. You're better in the morning, work in the morning. So know your rhythms, know when you're at your best, and create your business to suit that. It can be, at first, when you're trying to get getting the referrals through, you'll see anybody, anytime, anywhere. As much as you can do, put your boundaries in place and be working towards your ideal week, and create a business that suits you, because when you're happy, you're going to be great at your job. Okay. I think I've covered everything. I've put rooms. My room's really nice, because I was literally in a cupboard with a bed, and district nurses used to come in and disturb my sessions all the time. I had a few good rooms in the NHS, but I can offer water, coffees, just a lovely environment. It does make you realise how important the environment is. I really notice that people kind of come in and go, oh, this is nice. And that's how you want people to feel when they come to therapy, because they're about to be quite vulnerable, aren't they? So, yeah, so I think I've covered everything. Tried to be a bit more specific to IAPT, but pop some comments below if you've got anything you'd like to ask me, or if you want me to expand on anything, but I hope that's been helpful. Take care, bye.